Okay, let's sink our teeth into this. The stale air hit me like a punch to the gut. Literally. My stomach hasn't agreed with my diet of ramen and regret for weeks. I coughed, waving away the dust motes dancing in the single beam of my flashlight. Right. Let's get this over with, I muttered. Grandpa's will, or lack thereof, better be worth inhaling this much asbestos. Grandpa Edgar, bless his eccentric, bat-loving heart, had left me his antique shop. Dust and Curiosities, he'd called it. An unintentional pun considering the sheer amount of dust I was currently ingesting. I hadn't seen him in years. He'd always been a bit different. A fondness for capes, a aversion to sunlight, and a habit of speaking with a bizarre Transylvanian accent, even though he was from Des Moines, were just the tip of the weirdness iceberg. I figured he was just a theatrical dude with hobbies that stretched across the weirder side of the spectrum. The shop was a nightmare. Think Hoarders meets Addams Family. Stacks of velvet-draped furniture teetered precariously, ancient books overflowed from shelves, and taxidermied everything stared down with glassy, judgmental eyes. Okay, Mr. Squirrel, you can judge after you pay rent, I quipped, earning a satisfying thunk as I accidentally elbowed a skull off a shelf. After an hour of sneezing and nearly succumbing to a spiderweb-induced cardiac arrest, I found it. Behind a tapestry depicting what I could only describe as a Renaissance rave was a small, iron-bound chest. It was exactly what I was searching for. Jackpot. The lock was surprisingly easy to pick, and inside, instead of gold or jewels, were books. Old leather-bound books. Great. Looks like I've got a new set of coasters. I sighed. I started flipping through the pages. They were written in some archaic script, littered with diagrams and symbols I couldn't even begin to pronounce. Then, I saw it. A page titled De Sanguine Vitae Mortuis, or, as my barely 1 year of high school Latin brain managed to decode, of the blood life of the dead. Okay, now Grandpa was officially on the suspect list. I kept flipping, my skin crawling with each increasingly disturbing illustration. Crude drawings of fanged figures, rituals involving blood and moonlight, and then the resurrection process. A detailed diagram showing how to bring vampires back to life? Grandpa, you old rascal, I said, more amused than frightened. You and your hobbies. The thought of him performing one of these rituals was hilarious. I decided to keep the book. It was the only thing of value I had found so far. It has to be worth something. I returned home, exhausted and covered in dust, and tossed the books onto my coffee table. I grabbed a beer, plopped on the couch, and tried to unwind. But the images from the book kept flashing in my mind. It was creepy as hell. Suddenly, the power flickered. Oh, you gotta be kidding me, I groaned. First dust, now a blackout. Thanks, universe. I grabbed my phone and used its flashlight to navigate to the breaker box. As I flipped the breaker, I heard a noise, a scraping sound, coming from outside. Probably just a raccoon, I mumbled, trying to reassure myself. A raccoon with an unusually sharp set of claws. I returned to my living room, and my blood ran cold. The books were gone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I began to sweat. Okay, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Someone's playing a really bad joke. Then I heard it again. The scraping, louder this time, and moaning, definitely moaning. I grabbed a baseball bat. My grandpa was weird, but my neighbors were even weirder. All right, who the hell is out there? I shouted, the words catching in my throat. The moaning stopped, and then a shuffling sound, a rhythmic thump, scrape coming from my front porch. I crept to the door, my hand trembling on the doorknob. I took a deep breath and yanked it open. What greeted me wasn't a raccoon. It wasn't a prankster. It was Grandpa. But not Grandpa as I remembered him. His skin was pale, stretched taut over his skull. His eyes glowed with an unnatural red light, and his teeth were definitely sharper. Grandpa? I stammered. He blinked slowly, the red glow intensifying. A low growl emanated from his throat. Brains, he croaked. Brains? Grandpa, you always said you preferred liver and onions. Then the other figures emerged from the shadows. My neighbors, my mailman, even Mrs. Higgins, the lady who always gave me cookies. all with the same pale skin, glowing eyes, and, oh God, the same set of very, very sharp teeth. "Oh, son of a," was all I managed to say, even managing a nervous chuckle before they lunged. Turns out Grandpa's hobbies were very dangerous. So, my advice? If your oddball relative leaves you a dusty old shop filled with weird artifacts, burn the whole damn thing to the ground. Seriously. It's probably haunted, or worse, filled with vampire-raising literature. You'll thank me later, assuming there is a later. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a sudden craving for garlic bread and a really, really bright flashlight. Wish me luck. I'm going to need it. And maybe a silver bullet or two? Or, a really good lawyer to argue my case in the afterlife. Because, judging by the sounds emanating from my front lawn, I have a feeling I'm about to get batty. And not in a good way.